You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Kerry Greenaway and Mark Manley on the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show, only on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and I'm joined in the studio tonight by my lovely Mark Manley. Good evening, Mark.
Hello, my name's not Kerry Greenaway.
And we've also got Kaz with us tonight. Good evening, Kaz Rooney.
Good evening.
How are we both?
Very well, thank you.
Good. That's what I like to hear. All good in the hood. All good in the hood.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything, it was a cat.
We've got actually a bit of a menagerie going on tonight. I've got 2 dogs. Yes. Mark's got 2 dogs, a puppy and cats, and Kaz has got cats, and they're all deciding that tonight is the night that they're going to cause havoc and mayhem. But it is Mabon, so blessed Mabon to everybody out there. And the other thing I'd like to say is to all of you out there who are currently at Sage Paracon, have a fantastic weekend, because that looks an amazing weekend and it's happening right here, right now. Well, not right here, obviously, because we're in the studio, but it's happening right now. So I know people that are going to be texting me copious amounts of texts that are going to make me incredibly jealous over the weekend. So, yeah, enjoy yourselves, guys.
Yeah, get me a souvenir postcard.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too bitter and twisted there, did I?
I'll tell you what we have got here. We're having Oktoberfest here.
Ooh.
There's a pub on the way to where Lindsay's nan lives, and there was a massive, dirty, great big sign in one of the fields saying Oktoberfest. So I thought, yeah, definitely go to that.
Oh, gosh, that sounds great. Poor old James says he's got a ticket for Paracon and can't go.
Well, then you're going to have to go!
I can't believe that. I'm so sorry about that, James. But you're with us, so we'll keep you company tonight. Won't we, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, I suppose if we have to.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness. Anyway, tonight's subject, we're actually continuing on with Sir Arthur. I got told off because I kept missing off the Sir last week. So it's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, we got to a point... Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, we got to the point where he kind of sort of came away from his writing and his political career, and we're going into the more spiritualism side of things and case studies that Arthur, we're going straight back into the Arthurs. Arthur! Good old Arthur. Kind of looked at. Now, in 1917, which is where we left off last week, he gave his first public lecture on spiritualism, but he wanted to present the facts as he knew them for the benefit of mankind. That's quite a statement, isn't it, my lovelies?
Just a little bit. That is, to me, that comes across as a bit of, this is how I see it, and this is how you are going to bloody well see it as well.
for the benefit of mankind.
Exactly.
Now, he knew that this could affect his reputation and his career because he became quite an outspoken person for the movement, really. And he wrote many books, articles and countless public appearances to promote his personal beliefs. But because of who he was or how he was as a person, he had a really easygoing manner and real faith in the movement that made him a really effective speaker. And he was really sincere. And even opponents of spiritualism considered him to be incredibly well-intentioned. Now, good old Harry Price pops in at this point. Love a bit of Harry.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Harry Price has a bit of a reputation for himself for exposing false mediums. There's too many jokes there for me to do, and I'm not going to. He had this to say about Conan Doyle. I shall do Harry Price's voice.
Oh, go for it.
Okay.
Setting aside for the moment his extraordinary and most lovable personality qualities, chief qualification that he possessed for the role of investigator was his crusading zeal. Among all the notable persons attracted to spiritualism, he was perhaps the most uncritical. His extreme credulity, indeed, was the despair of all his colleagues, I of whom, however, held him in the highest respect for his complete honesty. Poor, dear, lovable, credulous Doyle. He was a giant in stature with the heart of a child.
I kind of think that kind of sums up the how, and I don't mean to be derogatory in any way, shape or form, but a little bit up their bottoms they were.
Well, it was sort of like the Victorian era, and as you know, the Victorian era did a lot for the Gothic horror and spiritualism as a whole. But yeah, when you had certain people had predisposed ideas that you did it their way or the highway, a bit like certain people that are around these days, I could mention, but I'm not going to because we don't deal with people that are up their own bottoms. So let's get back to Mr. Conan Doyle, shall we?
I don't know who you're talking about there.
Oh,
Anyway.
No.
Anyway, after 1918, he's because of his deepening involvement into the occult, Conan Doyle, like I said before, didn't write a lot of fiction. He actually concentrated on spiritualism instead and made trips to America, Australia and to Africa on psychic crusades.
See, what is a psychic crusade? I mean, you're going into Jerusalem with a dirty great big sword and shield, and then as you stop and see a Saracen, you're just going to look and go, I shall use my mind powers on you, heathen! And their head explodes.
What do you think a psychic crusade is, Kaz?
Not a lot, to be fair.
Going around spreading the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing talks and basically making it a little bit more accessible. Because don't forget, at this era, there was a huge explosion coming out of the Victorian period into spiritualism. And they've just been through, a couple of world wars. And things were like a little bit... People lost a lot of people. Excuse me, I'm a little bit froggy. I think I've got a cold coming. Feel sorry for me, everybody. Get the violins, get the old Sherlock Holmes violins out for me.
I was just about to say, yeah.
I know. They've been through world wars. They've been through the Congolese situation, and they've been through World War One. And I mean,
the Boer War.
The what?
Boer War.
Boer War. That's it. Thank you. Yes, the Boer War. Couldn't remember the name of it. How bad is that? Now, you've got to remember that the war. That's the puppy. The puppy is putting his input in. I mean, you've also got to remember that the war was very, very cruel to Conan Doyle. He actually lost his son, his brother, his two brother-in-laws, and his two nephews in the war.
Oh, that's very, very bad. And then, unfortunately, Mrs. Ballard passed away, didn't she?
But, well, yeah, that's a little bit further on. But, oh, yeah, she passed. Sorry, yes, old woman passed on, didn't she? And oh God, I'm so together tonight. Honestly, my brain is like mush in my head. I do apologise. It is completely like mush. So when you think of that, I mean, that's pretty intrinsic of most families at that time, though. Do you not feel?
Well, pretty much. I mean, everybody back then, pretty much every single family lost a family member or more. So I could. Yeah, no, you didn't. You didn't fight in the war, Chewie. You're too young, and the fact you're a pug, Anyway, so I'm being attacked as well. But, and I could see very much why people would turn to spiritualism, because it gave them a bit of hope that they could, say goodbye.
Or just connection to the people that they lost. I mean, bearing in mind, they'd wave them off goodbye and never saw them again. It must be the closure.
This is very true.
When you think about the closure on a situation like that, it must be incredibly difficult.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, there's been many reports of the First World War of people appearing at death, haven't they, in front of their loved ones and at their homes and everything.
Yeah.
That was one of the things, actually, Conan Doyle did look into.
He looked into so many different things, didn't he?
Did.
I mean, I was actually quite surprised at the extent that Conan Doyle had looked into different things. We'll talk about that in a second, but because we are going more into his spiritualist side tonight. Yes, dog, shut up. Anyway, after the death of his sons and the horrors of World War I, Conan Doyle progressively became more and more attached to spiritualism and the occult. And now, this is one of the very first topics that I came across when I was young, and I think it's because it's the fairy thing.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Can I just say something? Just notice in the chat room there, James has gone on about Ouija boards on the standards and divining rods at hand. What are you doing listening to our radio show with your rod in your hand? We've warned you about this before. Any more nonsense like that, young man, and you're barred. Carry on.
Kaz, help. He came across these fairy photos. Now, I have to say, these photos are very iconic.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody out there who hasn't seen these photos.
This is very true. I remember them.
Exactly. And these are the Cottingley fairy photos.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And I tell you what, to be absolutely fair, when you consider when those photos were taken, very, very well done. Very well done.
Well, no. When you've actually read the account, they weren't that well done. They were just very lucky.
No, but when the photos came out, though, they looked real. And I can see why people back then would have gone, "Zounds, my God, it's the Fae people!"
Yeah, when you put it into context, I think that is key, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming you've seen these photos, Kaz.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
They're one of the very first things, sort of, if you're looking into the paranormal, they're really one of the very iconic photographs. They're incredibly weird. Now, these images seemed to show several diminutive fairies dancing in the presence of two teenage girls, and the pictures seemed not to have been tampered with. Now, Conan Doyle championed these photos and even included them in his 1922 book, The Coming of the Fairies. Now, I could not slip over this topic. I had to look into the Cottingley fairies because, as I say, it was something that I very first came across when I started hitting the unexplained and the paranormal. And so I wanted to look at this in a little bit more depth. So should we do that, guys?
We could do another... I was just about to say, I mean, I know a little bit about the fairies. That sounded really bad. I know a little bit about the Cottingley fairies. So, yeah, I reckon we could possibly put our heads together, make it sound like a bowling strike, and do a show out of that.
Okay, so tonight we're going to focus on the Cottingley fairies. We will look at other points that Arthur Conan Doyle looked at, but this was sort of like his main point. When people look at Arthur Conan Doyle, the Cottingley fairies is one of those things that people automatically link to Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, the Cottingley fairies were photographed by two girls, Elsie Wright and her cousin Frances Griffiths. Now, Elsie was 15 at the time and Frances was 10. And this happened in the last few days of the First World War. Now, Kaz, why don't you start by telling us the story?
Okay. The story begins with Elsie borrowing her father's camera one Saturday afternoon in July 1917 in order to take Frances' photo to cheer her up. She'd fallen in the beck and been scolded for wetting her clothes. The girls were away for about half an hour, and when Elsie's father developed the plate later in the afternoon, he was surprised to see strange white shapes coming up. He believed these were birds, then sandwich paper, but it was Elsie who told him that these were fairies. Apparently, in order to prove that fairies really did exist, Elsie had taken the picture showing Frances with a troop of sprites dancing in front of her in August. Dancing in front of her. In August, the roles were reversed, and Frances took a photograph of Elsie with a gnome. The print was underexposed and unclear, as might be expected and taken by a 10-year-old. The plate was again developed by Elsie's father, who suspected that the girls had been playing tricks and refused to lend his camera to them anymore.
Oh, meanie.
I know, shame. Elsie's parents searched the girls' bedroom and wastepaper basket for any scraps of pictures or cutouts, and also went down to the beck to search for evidence of fakery. They found nothing, and the girls stuck to their story. They had seen fairies and photographed them.
One thing I will say about that is Frances, eventually, you know, when they came clean?
Yeah.
Frances maintained until, you know, the very end that the fifth photo was a real one. She said the rest were fake, but the fifth one was a real one.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Carry on, Kaz.
Carry on. The event was spoken of.
Carry on, Kaz.
The event was spoken of between friends and family, but that was all. Frances Griffith sent a letter to a friend in South Africa, where she had lived most of her life, dated November 9, 1918. She included a photograph of the fairies and wrote, "I am sending 2 photos, both of me. One of me in a bathing costume in our backyard. Uncle Arthur took that, while the other me with some fairies up the beg. Elsie took that one." The letter continued matter-of-factly, "Rosebud is as fat as ever, and I've made some new clothes. How are Teddy and Dolly?" On the back of photograph it read, "Elsie and I are very friendly with the Beck fairies. It is funny, I never used to see them in Africa. It must be too hot for them there." The case first publicly occurred in the summer of 1919 when Polly Wright, Elsie's mother, went to a meeting of the Theosophical Society in nearby Bradford. She was interested in the occult, having had some experiences of astral projection in memories of past lives. Theosophy, found by Helena Blavatsky, was the main engine.
Well done. A little round of applause from the studio on that name.
There you go.
Was the main engine that drove this interest across Britain. The lecture was on fairy life, and Polly mentioned that a daughter and a niece had taken some photographs of fairy. It would be sensational evidence if only because other dimensional entity had been able to be caught on camera.
Now, hold on 1 second. On that point, you can imagine nowadays if somebody had done something like that. Well, we see it. We've seen it with Most Haunted recently, where they've caught allegedly a full-bodied apparition. The stir that caused. You can imagine the stir this would have caused back in those days.
You would have the paranormal chat rooms going, absolutely do lally tap, going, no, fake, damn it.
Or not. Or you'd have in the same way as we had that recently, some people going, oh my God, that's so real, that's amazing, it's full fairies in full costume dancing around these girls. And then the other side going, no, I don't think so, that's just so obviously fake.
Was really well done. And I think if it was done that well today, there would be quite a few people going, oh, I don't know, it might be. But in fairness, the Most Haunted thing, you could see straight away that who it was.
Yeah, but you go back in time to the time that this was done. They didn't have the technology that we have now. I mean, it was like, I or I could be corrected on this, but wasn't it plates that you used to put into a camera back then?
Yeah, because it was before the box brownies. It was the big cameras that you had to stick the big proper place in, wasn't it?
Yeah, or very, very rudimentary cameras at least. I mean, the girls were very lucky to have been able to have been playing with this camera in the first place, I would have thought.
Well, yeah, to be fair, I don't let the girls go anywhere near my cameras, so,
Even to the...
Because I just know the big 20 million selfies on it.
Well, there is that. Anyway, sorry, Kaz, carry on.
Carry on. The two rough prints moved their way through theosophical circles and came to the evidence of theosophists at a Harrogate conference in the autumn, and eventually arrived with a leading theosophist, Edward Gardner, by early 1990. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had been commissioned by the Strand magazine to write an article on fairies for their Christmas 1920 issue. He was preparing this in June when he heard of the two fairy prints. He contacted Gardner and borrowed the copies. Still, contrary to what is often reported, Conan Doyle was on his guard. He showed the prints to his Oliver Lodge, a pioneer physical researcher who thought them fakes, perhaps involving a troupe of dancers masquerading as fairies. They would need to be really good dancers, wouldn't they? They'd need to be
a troupe of dancers portrayed as fairies? God, has nobody ever seen Pineapple Dance Studio?
And actually, James has raised a really important point in the chat room. Now, these are black and white photos, and that does end a level of more credibility. If it was modern, you would easily see that these were cut out photos of pictures of fairies. But because they were black and white, and the technology back in the day, and the image standard, like I said, this is something that the society had never seen before. You know what I mean? It was something that never come across before. It was almost like the first case of photography in the field, as it were. I mean, I know they'd done photography in seance conditions and stuff like that, but actually out and about, as far as I'm aware, this is like one of the first, other than the ghost, the brown lady at Raynham Hall. That was probably another one that was probably around this sort of time frame.
I was going to say, one of the other iconic photos from that sort of era was the ectoplasm one, wasn't it? I'm still not sure about that.
What, the Helen Duncan Smith one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
But
really not sure about that.
Well, I think that's fake all the way around, but that's my personal opinion. And that was Harry. That was Harry Price, who I'm sure at some point we'll cover. But going back to Arthur and the fairies, you can imagine... Pardon?
Arthur and the Fairies, that just sounds like a children's programme.
Probably is.
You just see them, la la la, Arthur! Now it'd be like the Smurfs, Arthur and the Fairies.
And this account is actually giving a different side to Arthur Conan Doyle, because it's always seemed so... whenever I'd read about this case, I'd always come across as Arthur being just a complete believer in everything. And he wasn't at all, was he, in regards to spiritualism?
No,
it shows that he was actually on his guard.
He was a believer in psychical research and spiritualism and stuff like that. But when it came to things just being, bang, there it is, he was quite guarded, and he did try and look into it properly first. He didn't just go, oh my God, man, it's fairies. He did go, oh, maybe. But he checked it out first.
He did. He showed the prints to Sir Oliver Lodge, a pioneer psychical researcher who thought them fakes, perhaps involving a troupe of dancers masquerading as fairies, as Kaz has already said. I love this. One fairy authority told him that the hairstyles of the sprites were far too Parisian for his liking. Like, you know what fairies wear and how they wear their hair. Who knows? They could have been Parisian fairies. Intriguingly, no one apparently wanted to examine the original photographs. Only the prints were analysed, and the two prints in an enhanced version would later appear in a magazine. Now, Conan Doyle sent Gardner to Cottingley in July. He reported that the whole Wright family seemed honest and totally respectful, which they probably did. You know, they probably came across incredibly credible. It was only the girls that were involved in it. And it's just put, how anyone could not see that they're cutouts just amazes him, quite frankly. Now we look at them and it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, but back then, because it was new and it was totally different from the norm, I don't think really back then people would have suspected two kids from a well-to-do family of taking it. I mean, you probably have the sensible people going, oh, I don't know, and then you've got the others going, oh, fairies!
Oh, fairies! Now, in August, he returned with cameras and 20 photographic plates, leaving them with Elsie and Francis. Now, bearing in mind, Elsie and Francis being 15 and 10, this is quite a responsibility to the girls, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was hoping
cameras back then.
Yeah, hoping to persuade them to take more photographs. Meanwhile, the Strand article was completed, featuring the 2 sharpened prints. So again, we then hit where publicity kicks in on this particular case. Yes, Andy says the girls were light differently. In one shot, the girl is blurred, but the fairy is not. Now we can look at it and just automatically go, yeah. But back then...
And back then you wouldn't.
Back then, it was the first time, anybody had come across this. And also, don't forget, the standard of people, how you judge people. We were a lot more distrustful of people. Back then it was all very stiff upper lip and society and, that sort of thing. And if you could afford to own one of these cameras, you're quite a well-to-do family.
Back then was everything was done on a handshake, a firm handshake and a stern look in the eye, wasn't it?
Yeah, my word is my bond.
Exactly. And
honour amongst gentlemen type of thing.
Yeah, and these days, people have no bloody honour. So, unfortunately, and it doesn't matter whether it's our circles, the paranormal circles, or what, anything these days. I've seen so many things that I've got, good views and morals on, and I see other people who just don't give a monkeys, and it's like, what happened to the world?
So Andy says people were gullible and stupid. Back then, probably a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the knowledge we have nowadays.
Cottingham fairies were the most haunted of its day, so,
Anyway, the issue of the Strand sold out within days of publication, and it was largely due to the photographic evidence that fairies existed. It caused major controversy and reactions from all involved, and those feeling they had to comment. Most were sceptical, including Mayor Hall Edwards, a radium expert.
Major, damn it, we've got to talk like that. Major Edwards, how damn your eyes, woman.
Major Hall Edwards. And he declared, Mark...
on the evidence, I have no hesitation in saying that these photographs could have been faked.
Anyway, Kaz, continue the story for me, please.
Okay. With the plates left by Gardner, Elsie and Francis took 3 more fairy photographs. The fifth picture in this entire series, the fairy sunbath, was created with a simple frame and knicker elastic construction pushed into the long grass. With the pull of the elastic, the fairies would fall backwards from the slots in the frame, thus providing a sense of fading when the camera caught the motion they were dancing. That's quite sneaky, isn't it?
That is.
That's quite clever. These are clever girls. These are clever girls. They're not stupid. The knicker elastic. I love that.
Yeah.
You don't know what that is, do you?
What, a knicker?
Oh, I meant elastic.
Oh, yeah, of course I do. I was going to be quite rude then. I thought better of it. Being as it goes to a podcast, it's out there forever.
I changed the habit of a lifetime. No. All I'm saying is your knicker elastic is so fast you can light your cigarette off it. But anyway, Kaz, what were you saying? I can hear it twanging now.
Twanging my knicker elastic.
No, that's the banjos, isn't it?
Anyway, her father returned the plates to London wrapped in cotton wool. Arthur Wright was greatly puzzled. He understood the photographs were faked, irrespective even of him and his wife not finding incriminating evidence. So again, there is this scepticism, but he needs the proof to back up his scepticism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he doesn't
even
want to
though
call his daughters, and he doesn't want to call these girls liars, but then on the same score, he's like, I can't find the evidence, so I can't call them liars just yet, but I'm a little bit perturbed by all this publicity that's now surrounding my daughters. I've got a lot of attention being focused on this. I know they're lying, but I need to prove that they're lying.
Back then, it was the honour thing, wasn't it? It wasn't that way of saying people were gullible and stupid. Entirely, that's not the case. Back then, people literally went on the word. So, yeah, they may have seemed gullible and stupid to our eyes in these days, but back then they weren't. They were sceptical or they were honourable, you know?
No, I think there was that the honourable marred their scepticism. Because although in his heart of hearts he knows that this isn't real, he knows it's fake, he can't be openly sceptical because his honour won't derogate. That's probably not a word. I've probably made a word up there. Yeah, he can't do that to his family unless he's got the proof. If he has the proof, then he can do that. But until he has, his honour wouldn't allow him to call them out on it. So although inside his scepticism is there, because of this level of honour that they have, the way that they used to deal with things, like I say, stiff upper lip, and you don't call people liars and you don't call people cowards and stuff like that unless you've got proof. Do you know what I mean? You keep it more inward. You don't put it out there unless you've got the proof.
Yeah.
Well, as James has said in the chat room, believe in fairies, but mistrusted because of the early Darwin's theory of evolution. But having said that, Darwin was right with a lot of things, but we found recently that we had lots of different species of hominids. There wasn't just cavemen and human beings, and cavemen, Homo sapien, and I can't remember what the first Africans were called, but there was a lot more than the first three tribes. There was you got that island that the hobbits were found on, didn't they?
I love the way he's gone off on a tangent.
No, I digress completely, but it's small people, you know. And you've got the leprechauns, you've got the fairies, you've got the fae people. We did a show on fairies and fae people a while back, and these were included in it.
This is true. On this point, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to bring a little bit of sense into the room with a little bit of Harry Price.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Oh, welcome back to the Dark Mirror Show. I am Kerry Greenaway. I'm joined by Mark Manley and Kaz Rooney. And tonight we're talking the second part of Arthur. I nearly went Arthur again. Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Oh my goodness, tonight is absolute mayhem. And we are looking at one of the cases that Arthur is famous for, which is the Cottingley fairies. Now, we got to the point in the story where the girls, Arthur Wright, the girl's father, knew that they were fake but couldn't prove it, so he was sceptical. And he was really confused, actually, at this point, because he could not understand why other grown men had been fooled by this. And furthermore, his daughter was now the centre of a nationwide, if not international, sensation. And as Arthur Conan Doyle had used pseudonyms, the children were fairly safe from public scrutiny. But Arthur Wright, well, he kind of underestimated Conan Doyle, didn't he? Because he couldn't believe that such an intelligent man, who was famed for writing Sherlock Holmes, has been bamboozled by our Elsie and her at the bottom of her class. So, you know, it really threw him. I mean, nowadays you would get publicity agents and all sorts of other people involved, but back then they wouldn't have had that.
This is very, very, very true. And I bet they really... I mean, have you ever seen the interview with them?
No.
There was a program on ages ago about it. They loved, the girls loved all the attention and everything they got, which I can understand.
Well, I'm sure they did. I mean, it's not every day that you get a bit of infamy. They've all
got it infamy.
Oh dear, Kaz, continue for me, please.
Riding on the controversy, a last expedition was made to Cottonley in August 1921. The clairvoyant Geoffrey Hodson had been asked to verify any fairy sightings. The fairies refused to be photographed.
Strange that.
Yes. Though both by Hodson and Elsie stated that they had seen them. So he's actually said he's seen them. Elsie and Francis later admitted they had deceived him, pointing out fairies none were seen by them. The clairvoyant nevertheless saw them, or perhaps he felt he had to substantiate Elsie's claims. Could he deny seeing anything?
Yes, he could, because if he had any integrity or credibility to his name as a working medium, clairvoyant, then yes. If you do not see it, you do not say it. And I'm sorry, but poor old Geoffrey Hodson let himself down big time on this one, surely.
He made himself a laughingstock, I'd imagine.
You would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah. The girls have said they've deceived him, and he's saying, no, I've seen them.
I'm sorry, but there's too many people in paranormal circles.
We're now going to take out the whole of the paranormal community on this one, are we, Mark?
No. There's you know yourself, like with certain places that you go to and certain people that are there, you will get somebody going, yes, I saw it, and then you'll get somebody next to them who doesn't want to look like a complete prank going, oh yes, Marjorie, I saw it as well too. Big hair, yes, and it's things like that do sort of bring a bit of the poo-pooing down on us,
The thing is, there is such a thing in the paranormal field. When you're in an investigation and one person says, did you hear that? And it's the fear of not being left out. Yes, I heard that. What did you hear? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it goes round and you can see it occur. If you step back from an investigation, you watch a group of people, you can see it spread. And even the people that have got a look on their face of a little bit of confusion are going, yeah, I heard it, but they're not really sure that they did hear it. There is a name for this. I can't remember the name of it. I want to say peer pressure, but it's not a peer pressure. It's I don't know. Andy, help me out. You're in the chat room, so you could help me out on the name of this. But there is a specific name for it. And it goes like wildfire through the group, like panic does in a room when something happens. It's like a contagious thing. It's a really strange phenomenon, but it does happen. Now, in regards to this particular case with the clairvoyant, I do think... No, it's not that, Andy. I can't say that. Sorry, everybody. I can't actually repeat what Andy Mercer has just put in.
Trust you, Andy. Oh, damn it, I shall call it bullshit thing. As it is, mate.
Oh, dear. Anyway, but within this, it is literally one clairvoyant and the two girls. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
this is very... Sorry, I was just reading what Jane said. So,
I know, I'm reading the chat room too. It's quite humorous tonight, guys. So if you're listening, please join in because you'll see what we're actually laughing at. Now, because it's only the three, but he kind of like stuck to the point even after the girls were like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that's ruined his credibility and his integrity on this one.
Yeah.
Now, there were many who did not believe in fairies. They pointed out that no third party was ever present when the 5 photographs were taken. And they pointed out, quite correctly, that Elsie painted and drew incredibly well and that she always seemed immersed in drawing fairies. Funnily enough, that she was actually very knowledgeable about photography and actually worked at photographers. Now, the latter only made her quite an able photographer, though. Some asked whether the photographs or the plates had been tampered with. We now know that this was not the case. Animated drawings were used instead. Thank you. It is peer pressure, wanting to conform. Thank you.
It wasn't Photoshop then?
No, not Photoshop back in those days. Kaz, if you would like to continue.
Okay. In general, the skeptics were unable to prove the photographs were faked. As late as 1978, James Randi and a team from New Scientist studied the photographs and thought they could see strings attached to some figures. There were none. Hat pins were used, but the believers did not fare better. The point of a pin in the gnome's midriff was, according to Conan Doyle, an umbilicus, and therefore proof that birth in the fairy kingdom might be a similar process to human birth.
Oh, they come out of Kinder eggs.
The gnome photograph was taken by Francis, a less expert photographer than Elsie. The elongated hand in the picture is due to camera slant, though believers have attributed to psychic elongation.
I love this. People are jumping onto any little thing to try to back up their point. This is actually a really good case study in modern day investigations. You get the believers that will look at any little thing and twist it in a funny kind of way to make it credible to their belief system that it's real. And then you get the skeptics that go, no, that's just a camera slant. Come on, guys. Can you not see that? We see this all the time. Even in nowadays where people, even, and I hate to say the word, but the old photos, you'll get the people going, no, this has been well researched. If you look at the ASAP or the SPR websites, it is well-known phenomena. It has been explained due to flash photography, it's a orb zone, all the technical terms that come out in regard to orbs. And then you'll get one that go, no, it's definitely a spirit. All the evidence is there. You just choose not to look at it.
I can think of another radio station where that shall remain nameless, where everybody said that a certain thing was no, it's not real, and one person in particular said, yes, it's this, it's my way or the highway, or you must believe me, if not, bugger off. And yeah, it does make you seem like a complete wally.
Okay. I don't know what I really don't know what you're talking about there. In 1981, I know you will. In 1981 and 1982, Joe Cooper interviewed Francis and Elsie for an article in The Unexplained. Now, Elsie admitted that all 5 of the photographs had been faked, and Francis had a copy of Princess Mary's gift book, and the girls had used a series of illustrations by Arthur Shepperson as a model from which Elsie constructed the fairy figures. They admitted it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And Francis also admitted the hoax, claimed that the first 4 photographs had been faked, but the 5th were real. Both ladies contended they had indeed seen real fairies near the beck. The admission was not totally out of the blue. In 1971, Elsie, interviewed for BBC TV, was asked, are they trick photographs? Could you swear on the Bible on that? Elsie, after a pause, said, I'd rather leave that open if you don't mind, but my father had nothing to do with it. I can promise you that.
Well, at least she stuck up for her dad.
She did. The attitude of Elsie and Francis to the whole question of the fairy photographs has been a typical Yorkshire one, to tell a tall story with a deadpan delivery and let those who will believe it do so.
Yeah, well, as you know, I live up here and so does Kaz, and people can look you straight in the eye, and mind you, I can do that as well. I can run you complete yarn and wind you up and let you back down again until you realise I go, idiot.
Yeah, that's very true. You've done that to me on many occasions.
Yeah.
And I've been sitting there going, really? Really? Because you're telling it so seriously. And then right at the end, you'll say, and I'll go, I can't believe you did that. And we'll fall about laughing. So, yeah. Anyway, Elson has often said as much, I would rather be thought of as a solemn-faced comedian.
Yeah. I still like the bit about, after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle seeing the head of the pin and go, no, it's an umbilical cord. To be absolutely honest,
bless him.
These days, as you know yourself, If the photos were given to us to look at, I probably would have looked at it and gone, no, it's a Willie. I don't know.
Anyway, there's another aspect to Arthur Conan Doyle I want to discuss, guys, before because we're running out of time again. Every week we run out of time. Now, in 1920, Harry Houdini. Now, this story, well, it's not a story, this is something that happened, is just crazy. Now, he is considered by some to be the greatest magician of all time, and he specialised in escapes. He could inexplicably, is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
Extract himself from coffins, mailbags and safes. And in one famous incident, he even broke free of handcuffs in Scotland Yard. Now, Harry Houdini became interested in spiritualism after the death of his beloved mother, and he had hopes of contacting her. However, after consulting mediums and attending seances, he became convinced that mediums were charlatans. Thereafter, he made it a personal mission to expose false mediums. Now, Conan Doyle first met Houdini in 1920, and they actually became quite good friends at this point. And Conan Doyle wanted to make Houdini a believer in the movement. So you can almost see the heated discussions that were taking place between the two men at this point.
Yeah.
And he even suspected that Houdini actually possessed some psychic gifts. Now, Houdini must have been quite flattered by this attention from the famous writer and creator of Sherlock Holmes. Bearing in mind the character that Sherlock Holmes was, it's in strict contrast to the Arthur Conan Doyle of the spiritualist movement, who believed in the Cottingley fairies.
This is very true, and as James has said, Houdini had a secret code for his mum.
He did.
And it didn't come through with the mediums, and it was, no, you're talking rubbish, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now, Houdini really did actually want to believe in the movement, and if he could find a genuine medium, then maybe, just maybe, he might be able to contact his mother. Now, in 1922, Conan Doyle and his family were in America for a lecture tour on spiritualism, and they arranged to meet Houdini and his wife Bess in Atlantic City. Now, while the couple were visiting Lady Conan Doyle, you see, grammar helps, doesn't it?
It does, really. Yes.
Suggested that they hold a séance. Now, Lady Conan Doyle was alleged to have had quite good psychic skills herself. So, she thought she'd have a go. Now, she was an inspired or automatic writer, and she felt that she could help Houdini attain what he'd long sought for, which was contact with his dead mother. And the session went well. Lady Conan Doyle produced 15 pages, guys, of writings. That's a lot of writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Allegedly from Houdini's mother. Now, while Houdini didn't want to sort of doubt that the Conan Doyle sincerely wanted to help him, he did doubt that the message was from his mother. He didn't say anything at the time, but the communication was in English, for a start. Now, this is always a sticking point. This is always a sticking point with mediums, because his mother didn't speak English.
Do you know what? That gets me about certain TV shows when they go to film, like in Dracula's Castle and stuff, and they're speaking in English. Yeah, and you're there mate, he's going to turn around and go, one batty, He's not going to turn around and go, oh, geezer, I'm sound,
Well, apparently your gatekeepers are translators too. That is how people get around that particular subject these days. They're not going to talk to me in a foreign language when I can't pass a message on in a foreign language because I don't understand it. That's how people get around it. But anyway, the writings also made no mention of the fact that the séance happened on his mother's birthday, which is quite an integral point, and you would think that if it was his mum coming through, she'd sort of be going, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Quite possibly. No?
Oh, she couldn't speak English, so she wouldn't have said that at all. Come on,
this is true. This is very true. But you know where I'm coming from with that one. She wouldn't make reference to it.
Yes.
I'll tell you something, if I'm dead and I'm coming through to one of my sons, I'm going, oi, it's my birthday, where's my flowers? Do you know what I mean? You would think if that is the spirit, it's one of those verification, pure proof points. You would think.
True.
I could be completely wrong. They've got goldfish in their ear. I was going to say, not a babel fish in your ear.
That's
the translator.
Stick a babel fish in your
Universal
ear.
translator, yeah.
You can just see Victorian mediums going around somebody's house and saying, have you got pet goldfish? Yeah, all right, hang on 1 second. And they just grab his goldfish and shove it in his logo and go, oh, yeah, they're coming through now.
Just bring me goldfish
You just
in
look
my
at
ear.
them like, get out of my...
Now, months later, didn't do it on the night, but months later, Houdini actually shared his doubts, and Conan Doyle countered that the contact between the two worlds produced a natural translating effect. It was normal that the communication even would be in the language of the medium and not that of the spirit. And he also stated that things such as birthdays didn't matter to those in the spirit realm. Yet, if you're coming back as a spirit and you're wanting to provide proof that you are who you say you are, I would actually think that's quite an integral point. If it's on somebody's birthday, I would say if you're a spirit and you're really talking to a medium, that is an actual verification, credible point that if the medium doesn't know, I am having trouble communicating tonight, Andy. You would actually point out that today is my birthday. He would know that. You don't know that, but he knows that. That's a point of credibility, verification, proof.
On my birthday.
You would think. Or am I completely wrong?
Oh, yeah, I mean, to be absolutely honest, even if you've gone in the spirit over to the spirit world, if that's your mum and you're her son, that is going to be a big thing between the two of you, and it would have been brought up, I think.
And there was supposed to be a secret word or a phrase. No one knows what that was, but there was supposed to have been a secret word or phrase that Houdini and his mother had agreed upon on passing. Now, this is a theme that has occurred time and time again through people. Andy says, but isn't your death day more important?
No, because I don't know when I'm going to lose my hearing.
You know what? I know... I can't remember when my grandparents, when they passed. I know roughly time of year, but I couldn't tell you the actual day they passed. I'm awful with dates, though. Honestly, I always tell mediums, don't bother giving me dates, because I couldn't tell if they were right or wrong.
Yeah, you're better off on apples.
You're going to have to give me something a bit more, I don't know, a bit more imagery than just a date. It's numbers. I don't do numbers. Anyway, moving on from that. Their friendship never recovered from this rift. This caused a huge rift between Houdini and Conan Doyle in the end. And it kind of ruined their friendship. Because also, like, when he was questioned, to come out with, that's normal communication, would be in the language of the medium and not that of the spirit. I don't know,
I see, personally, if you are a genuine medium and you are genuinely in contact with somebody who's not from this country or doesn't speak English, then if you were psychically linked, then surely you would be able to speak in their language, regardless of whether you know it or not.
I don't know.
It's that psychic link, I would have thought it would come through like fluent.
I honestly don't know. I find it more credible when someone who does not know me, has never been to my home, turns around and says there's something on your wall that's really relevant, and it's something to do with a war, and it's something to do with your grandfather, and I kind of feel that it's not actually real, but it's incredibly relevant. And I have a picture with my grandfather's medals on the wall, but they weren't actually his medals. That to me is more verification than she died on this date, because I can't remember dates. So to me that means nothing. If you told me she died on April the 29th, I'd be like, I'd have to check it. You know what I mean? But the here and the now, right here and now, she's picking up on a picture in my house with a World War link, with my grandfather link, and it's not quite what it seems to be. That is more credible to me than a date that I'd have to go away and look up, because quite frankly, I ain't got time for that shit. You know, I mean, looking up crap like that, no.
Also, like a certain medium that I know, who, when they first met me, didn't know me from Adam, gave me a reading and told me stuff that there's no way, even with doing cold reading, that lady could have known about me. No
comment. Anyway, as years went by,
one of the best ones I know.
Well, thank you very much. As years went by, having spent over £250,000. Oh my God, that's a huge amount of money.
Back then, God, that's millions, isn't it?
That's back in them days, yeah. In pursuit of his esoteric dreams, Conan Doyle was faced with the necessity to earn money. And in 1926, Professor Challenger and his colourful friends appeared again in The Land of Mist, a novel of psychic adventures followed by The Disintegration Machine and When the World Screamed. Cheery subjects by the sound of it. 2 years later, his last 12 stories about the exploits of the immortal detective Sherlock Holmes was compiled in the Casebook of Sherlock Holmes. Anyway, after that, this gets a bit sad now.
Oh.
So I want your Sherlock Holmes violins out, please. In autumn of 1929, I can't believe he's doing it. In spite of having been diagnosed with angina pectoris, Conan Doyle went off for his last psychic tour to Holland, Denmark, Sweden and Norway. And he was in such pain by the time he returned that he had to be carried ashore. And he was bedridden from that time on. And he managed to have one last adventure on a cold spring day in 1930.
I'm sorry, what adventure?
Just an adventure.
Oh, no, I'm sure it wasn't just an adventure.
No, it was just one last adventure.
The quixotic adventure.
You could call it that if you wish to.
You carry on.
Oh dear. He rose from his bed. You've killed the moment now, Mark. He rose from his bed and unseen went into the garden. When he was found, he was lying on the ground, one hand clutching his heart, the other holding a single white snowdrop. Arthur Conan Doyle died on Monday, July the 7th, 1930, surrounded by his family. His last words before departing, for obviously departing, was, he said, the greatest and most glorious adventure of all. And they were addressed to his wife, and he whispered, "You are wonderful." Oh!
Oh.
That was his last words. You are wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, that's all I can say to that. It's just lovely.
Do you like a tissue?
Yeah, just like mop myself up on that one.
Wait, no.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
I know, how gorgeous it was that.
Well, you can just imagine that, because you know how much he thought of her. Because we spoke about it last week, he absolutely adored her. So yeah.
Yeah, the blonde minx.
Yeah, the blonde strumpet. Yeah.
But he absolutely adored her, and he had. I mean, God, we have literally on the spiritualist side, we have touched the surface of that. Check out. I mean, he wrote cases for spirit photography. He came loggerheads against Harry Price. He came loggerheads against... Andy Mercer says, "Oh, pass me the bucket." Not a romantic bone in that man's body, I swear to God. Oh, I think that's a absolutely wonderful ending.
Very poignant.
Very poignant, definitely. But he, as I say, there was so much more to Arthur Conan Doyle's spiritual journey. He wrote prolifically still about spiritualism just as much as he did on his fictional work. And other work. He was an incredible character. I've thoroughly enjoyed looking into Arthur Conan Doyle. What about you guys?
Yeah, I have actually, because it sort of leads me on to what I'd quite like to do for next week.
Well, I've already decided this.
Oh, okay. I'm terribly sorry. We'll go with you, shall we?
Okay. Next week, we're going to have a look at somebody who's a little bit more racy, I think is the expression. Mark is going to have an absolute field day with this guy, and I came across him whilst researching Arthur Conan Doyle. So,
Well, who is it?
God, it's Frederick W.H. Myers. I know, there's a tumbleweed moment there. No one knows who the hell this guy is, do you?
Nope.
Oh.
He is the founder of the SPR. And you want a bit of racy on a Friday night? We're going to be giving you a little bit racy along with spiritualism next Friday night.
Okay, all right.
Honestly, this guy is a little bit racy. And I thought you'd quite enjoy the antics of Mr. Myers.
You like me to do all the different voices and stuff as well?
Mate, you're going to have an absolute field day.
Yeah.
I would also like to do a show one day on what I call the Magnificent Seven. But the the London Paranormal Society had Charles Dickens and that lot in.
The Ghost Club.
Let's do one about... Yeah, that's it. Oh, you horrible dog. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to do one based on their exploits.
I'm sure we will. But next week we're going to be looking at Frederick W.H. Myers. Because, like I say, he's a little racy. And when I came across him, I was like, oh my goodness. So we're going to do him. We're going to do him next week.
Sorry? I'm straight.
So we'll get our little research caps on and we're going to have a little look at him. I'm sure we will cover the Ghost Club at some point, Mark, because this is leading me down a little exploration, should I say, into biographies. I quite enjoy biographies.
I can sort of see where you're going with this, and I think there's going to be a series of shows. So, yeah, cool.
Yeah? Kaz?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah? We're actually going back to the fundamentals of the spiritualist movement, where a lot of these concepts were born. You know, a lot of intelligent men were coming up against concepts and things that, hadn't been explored before. And as I say, next week we're looking into Mr. Myers. And guys, join us for that. Anyway, we have shows going out every night of the week apart from Saturday night. This weekend coming, we have got Paraforce. I can't wait. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Join me on Sunday for the Spirit Dimension show. I am talking to the wonderful Mark Richardson. I can't wait for that one. And up until then even, take care. Good night. Farewell. Say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Don't forget, we're also on Twitter and we are also on YouTube. So subscribe, like us, follow us, and share all over the place and help spread the word for Paraforce Radio. Good night, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.